I'm Sita Fay, Director of External Affairs.
I'm Jamie Buck, Director of Innovation.
This is Fundamental, the podcast from NYSIF, the organization at the intersection of finance, health, business, and labor in New York. Today, we have Kim Hill Ridley, New York State's first Chief Disability Officer. Kim, thanks for being here with us today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
We are very excited. Jamie, when I talked about our guest, we said, what do we know about EO 31 at NYSIF? So I'm really excited that this is going to be part of a broader episode where we talk about Executive Order 31, what that means at NYSIF, and with other guests that we have from NYSIF. But with Kim here today, there is so much to learn and so much to talk about. Kim, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I mentioned EO 31. I'd really love if we could kick off with that. An EO is an executive order for those of you that are not government listeners. And Executive Order 31 really stems from a lot of the work that you've done here as the first Chief Disability Officer of the state of New York. I want to hear about EO 31, and I really want to hear about what does that even mean to be the first Chief Disability Officer for the state of New York? What do you do?
So we need an hour just for that, right? So first of all, let me just talk about EO 31 a little bit. We have to give all the credit in the world to Governor Hochul on the two EOs that I'm going to mention here today. EO 31 is an executive order that commits New York State to being a model employer for people with disabilities. And I need to go back to the very first day in which the governor created this office back on Valentine's Day of 2022. She was abundantly clear that one of her top priorities for this office is to improve employment outcomes for people with disabilities. There has been a national kind of model in which states should be acting as model employers so that private sector employers can kind of look to what we are doing and do the same. And that is what EO 31 does. It commits New York State to saying, yes, for all of our state agencies, for all of the people that we hire, we are going to hire people with disabilities into all aspects of employment. That EO was signed in honor of the ADA anniversary in July of 2023. We've been working on that ever since, which is really exciting. As New York State's first Chief Disability Officer, first of all, I have a team of incredible people that is behind me and surrounding me every step of the way. We focus on all types of disability issues, whether it be physical, sensory, behavioral, mental, intellectual, developmental, any type of disability. We're an open door for any New Yorker to come and tell us if they have a problem, try to seek solutions. We will get them the help that they need, get them in touch with the right agency or community provider, whoever it might be. We're a little bit more than 3 years into all of that work, which has been incredible. We spent probably the first year and a half doing so many meet and greet meetings. I think our EA, Kim, at one point counted, and we had over 2,000 meetings. That was at least a year ago, just reaching out to the community to let them know that we're here, what we're doing. And that's just skimming the surface, trying to make sure that New Yorkers know that there is now not only a person, but an office within the governor's office to make sure that their voices are heard.
That's incredible.
Really is. Thanks for sharing that, Kim. One of the things, and you mentioned different types of disabilities, so not all disabilities are visible. Can you share with us and talk a little bit more about non-visible disabilities and what are some best practices that people can be thinking about how to best support in the workplace?
The non-visible disabilities, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Especially when you're talking about employment. If you so choose when you have an invisible disability, and that could be anything from a sensory disability. If you have low vision or blindness, low hearing or deafness, right away, someone isn't going to be able to look at you and know that you have some type of disability, any type of behavioral disability, mental illness, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's not known right away. Unlike someone with a physical disability in a wheelchair, using a cane, using a walker, or an amputee or anything like that. Like I said, with our office, we invite everybody to come to us. The disability awareness and the disability etiquette that we try to get across to anyone who is working with or communicating with a person with a disability is to truly treat them as the same as people without disabilities. It's always people first. People want to be acknowledged for who they are first. And a lot of times their disability does not define them. It's only a piece of who they are. The issue with people who have hidden disabilities is, when you don't know that someone has a disability, it becomes a little bit more challenging to know how to maybe assist if they need assistance. The person is going to request the assistance if they need it, right? And it might take a little longer because they might not need it right away. But wait for that person to acknowledge it, to request what they need, and then go from there. I think that that's always the best advice.
That's great feedback.
Kim, disability etiquette. I was trying to think of it. What is the word? How do I ask the question? I just want people that don't have disabilities to understand how we're supposed to make sure that we do accommodate, make things accessible, don't treat people differently. And I just heard you say with disability etiquette, that's the phrase that we've been looking for the entire time. You said people first. Make sure you're talking to that person first. Their disability doesn't define them.
Exactly.
And that advice is so important to hear because you'll see people, what do I do? Somebody, if they have a physical disability, should I reach out? Should I open the door? Should I accommodate? Should I move things out of the way? I truly believe that people, no actual data to back this up, 99% of the time just want to do the right thing. And sometimes because people are so worried about doing the right thing or saying the right thing that they say the wrong thing or they do the wrong thing. Any other disability etiquette, people first is obviously clearly what needs to be done. Any other disability etiquette you want to share that you think would be helpful, whether from your own personal experience or in this role that you have, or just advice that you would say to someone if maybe they did make a mistake or they thought they were doing something that was helpful, but it's not helpful? What do you tell people?
I think the most important one that can sometimes cause harm is if it is a person primarily with a physical disability and or sensory disability, particularly blindness. If you go to either guide them or touch any of their medical apparatus, you may end up inadvertently steering them wrong or potentially touching their apparatus in a way that it's going to make it collapse or take away the ability for the person who has a disability, who knows how to work their equipment, and move it in a way where it's not functioning correctly. And worst case scenario, end up with someone stumbling, falling, or being misdirected. Always ask someone if you're going to touch their equipment. And I don't mean like if you've known someone for many years, like I don't care when someone leans on my chair. Like that does not bother me at all. But some people, it really, really bothers. It's like infringing on personal space. So if you're going to be invading their personal space, ask in the nicest way possible until at least you get to know the person, right? And obviously, if you don't know the person, if someone is like going to open their own door, don't pull it all the way, especially if they can't see. They might not know, and then they might fall. Things like that. Generally, if a person is going to need help, they're going to ask. That said, if you're ahead of someone and you're saying, hey, let me get the door for you, you can do that to an able-bodied person or a non-disabled person. People are just going to say, thank you. That's fine. But if someone is mid-action, don't grab anything from them because that can result in a bit of an injury. But for the most part, if you're doing something that is you would do for an able-bodied, non-disabled person, that's fine. But if you think you might be infringing on personal space or personal equipment, ask first.
This is such good advice for people without disabilities. Is there anything else you want to add to that? We talked about disability etiquette, but how can we be better allies and advocates as well, in addition to just the everyday etiquette that we should be making sure everyone understands? A good way to be an ally, a good way to be an advocate.
Getting to know people in the disability community. I mean, most of the time, like someone knows someone who has some type of disability, right? Get to know them, become friends with them, like learn just through developing a normal relationship with another person, the things that affect them, the things that might make you an advocate, as well as the people that actually have whatever type of disability they might have. We finally have a website. We have 3 disability brochures that one of our amazing interns did. You can just Google CDO New York State and it'll pop up.
I think that's a good segue to tell us what a CDO does. What do you do on a day-to-day basis? Share some insights with us there.
We're trying to tackle the issues as people bring them up to us and move the needle forward. So we're working with not only community members, but the state agencies, depending on what the issue might be, in order to, at the end of the day, make New York a more accessible, inclusive, and integrated place. Our office is also statutorily responsible for managing the Most Integrated Setting Coordinating Council. I chair that council that has existed since 2002. That council is responsible for Olmstead implementation in New York. Olmstead means making sure that people receive services in the most integrated setting. So that council meets quarterly, and then we have a ton of work to do between those quarterly meetings. We work with over a dozen agencies on Olmstead implementation. We have 8 committees that are getting up and running to guide us in that. And ultimately, we're responsible for developing an Olmstead plan for New York State. So a lot of our work is done on that.
Mhm.
Pretty much everything that our office does could be considered Olmsted related. Even all of the executive order work that we do for both EO 31 and EO 40, which commits New York State to being an employment first state. That came after EO 31, obviously, but that is kind of going to be the top of our employment umbrella so that people who don't have disabilities or work with people who have disabilities automatically assume when they are looking at a person with a disability, whether it's visible or invisible, that employment is their first option.
Mhm.
We don't assume that they're going to not work. We're going to assume that they are going to work. It's going to be competitive and integrated and that they can follow whatever career path they want to follow. So anything employment related is falls under that. We've launched an inclusive internship program based off of one that is running in New York City called PI, or Partnership for Inclusive Internships, that is connecting people with disabilities to internships within state agencies, that the goal is to lead to full-time or part-time employment, whichever the person with a disability works better for them. I think I've mentioned enough for us to work more than 9 to 5 every day. That is for sure.
Will you share your story, share your personal story, your disability, how it does and doesn't define who you are?
Another good question. So I experienced my disability. I was 16 years old. I went to a party that my mother insisted that I not go to if the parents were not going to be home. So, as every 16-year-old is going to do, I did exactly what she told me not to do. Went to a New Year's Eve party where there were no parents home. I'm pretty sure that all of my high school was in a small apartment complex. It hit midnight. Everybody jumped up, celebrated midnight, and I got knocked over accidentally. And I think I hit the back of my neck on the armrest of a couch. I'm not actually sure because I don't remember from the time I was knocked over to the time I hit the ground. But by the time I hit the ground, I knew something was horribly wrong. And anyway, I sustained a C5, C6 spinal cord injury. So from that point on, I've been paralyzed from the chest down. I was tutored through about 8 months of hospitalization and rehab, came back to school in my senior year of high school, graduated with my class, went on to go to what was Utica College. It's now Utica University for 4 years, decided to stay closer to home because I felt like being about 10 minutes away from my parents was probably a really smart safety net, and it ended up being a godsend. Anyway, went to college for 4 years there, met the man that would become my husband about 28 years later, even though we were together through college and stayed together. I started interviewing for jobs my senior year of college and was hired by the state assembly for their communications department in January to start in June once I graduated. So Mike and I moved out to Albany in June of 94. I worked for communications within the assembly for 4 years and then was asked to be the director of the task force on people with disabilities in the assembly, where I stayed until I interviewed with you in 2022. So now I'm here in the governor's office and it's been amazing. I absolutely love my job.
When I first met you, it was this interview. It was this pre-screen interview because we were talking about, in the prior role that I had, bringing someone into the governor's office that really knew about disabilities. And I remember just being blown away by your story because you did share your story at first. And I said, wow, imagine being 16 years old. And I remember really falls into that disability etiquette point. It's like, what is appropriate to say and not say? Because I was just in awe, but I was in awe all the time because we're hiring incredible experts in their field. And then here's somebody that we're going to hire for this role that actually gets it, that lives it, breathes it, gets it, and can talk about it. And it's Kim, it's you who I see first. A big part of our job at NYSIF is also to care about other people's employees. We are in the business of educating employers. What is advice that you have when someone becomes suddenly disabled and this wasn't their norm? What do you say to the people that are trying to support that individual? What would you say to an individual or a friend, caregiver, a spouse, a mother, a daughter, a son? How do we help others see the person first and not their disability?
So when you're coming across someone who it's just happening to, or it's more recent, the best thing that you can do is give that person and the people in their sphere a boatload of grace, because there is so much grieving and readjusting that that person and their family members, their friends, all of their people, right, are going through, that it's going to take a while for them to develop their new normal. I don't even know that I'm, let's not do the math on how many years since it's been since 1989. And that is aging me, and that's not possible. I still feel, you move into a different stage of life and you still come across things that you hadn't yet considered. So when someone's new in it, see the person first, ask what you can do. And if they say nothing, just be who you would be with that person without a disability. No one wants to be defined by any one thing, whether it's a disability or anything else. So getting to know that person, learning through whether it's them asking or you offering to help what that person needs or wants, just respect that. It just goes back to treat someone how you would want to be treated. I think we can bring a lot of things back to that simple rule.
Yeah, I think that spot on. One of the things we were talking about is, I think you hit on it, how do we do better with people with disabilities? One of the things we were talking about in preparation for this discussion is, well, how do we help folks without disabilities be better allies? And I think you've hit on a couple of those things there. Are there any other things that you want to share? I think meeting folks where they are is
Yep.
really what you're getting at. And I think your input here is amazing. If there's anything else that you want to share or add to that.
The only thing that I would say, and a mantra that the disability community lives by, is nothing about us without us. When an agency or a workplace or community, regardless of what that might be, is thinking about making changes, and you're thinking about making changes for all the populations that you represent, if there is something that strikes you as, the disability community might see this differently or have to experience this differently, get the used experience. Don't assume you know what they need. Ask them. 99% of the time, those community members are going to be so glad that someone brought them in as someone with lived experience. Don't make decisions on what someone with a disability needs without asking someone with a disability. Yeah. And again, that can be harder if those are things that you're thinking about from the hidden disability perspective. But from my perspective, that's why the governor created this office, right? It's not just for people with disabilities, but for the people that want to interact in the right way with a disability community to get that same type of information. So there are places that you can go. There's community organizations for all different types of disabilities that people can go to. Utilize them.
Right.
They're there for a reason.
Yep. Thank you. You've served in numerous and various leadership roles and are now serving, as we've talked about, as Chief Disability Officer for the state of New York. What's your fundamental advice for other executives and those serving in the public sector?
Couple of things. I think I've learned a lot through this experience. This is by far the most leadership position that I've had in a professional way, much more elevated than different positions that I've had. Get to know your peers within the community, and it doesn't have to be on the same topics, but forging those relationships where you can bounce things off of peers that are going through the same thing. It might be different issues, but having those relationships where you can get good advice, have people that you can trust to guide you, to make you the best person you can be in that job. That's been really helpful for me here. So getting to know how to do the job from other people who have either gone before you or who are currently doing it, learning who you can trust while you're doing that job, and even making the relationships outside of government so that you have trusted people outside that are giving you really good advice. I think that that's really important. I think so much of what we do is relationship building. And oftentimes, I think sometimes my staff gets a little frustrated because I'm talking too much when I'm doing meetings. But for every meeting that we host, any meeting that we are part of, those first couple of minutes, I want to know how those people, how their kids are doing or how their vacation was, or I want to get to know the people that we are working with as people, because at the end of the day, we are all bringing different perspectives and come from different walks of life. And that's really important. The relationship building to me has been the most important.
And I think part of what you said is why we're here having this discussion on the podcast, right? It is about those relationships, and having that opportunity to dialogue with leaders like yourselves allows us to do other things and take conversations to other parts of our organization, and you can continue to be an ally with us. So relationships are the key. And I think
Absolutely.
that resonated really well throughout your whole conversation so far with us here. So thank you for that. Sita?
Kim, we ask everyone this, so this is not unique for you. It is special. You are special. We're all special. But I really want to know, about this running with the theme, who's been a mentor to you? How do they inform who you are and how you lead today?
I was certainly shaped to come into government by my father. He worked for the Assembly for many, many years, was counsel to the majority leader, parliamentarian for the Assembly. I learned my love for government and my love for this building, which, by the way, I hope you guys got to see.
Incredible. Yeah, we're going to do a little walking around after this.
You need to. It is beautiful. And if you think about who has walked through this building every day, it's not lost, right? I remember coming to the Capitol building when the elevator still had elevator workers and being able to go into the Assembly chamber and bang the gavel when no one was in. And as an under 10-year-old, still having like this awe for this building and what it represented. I remember assembly being one of the first words I could spell and being so proud of it. And then, having my first job as coming into the Assembly, I was lucky that I was the director of a task force that had a change in leadership every 2 to 4 years. I may not have necessarily thought it was lucky at the time because it's a lot of turnover.
Sure.
But, I got every elected official by definition is a leader, right? I got to learn from so many different Assembly members, their leadership style, how they actually created successes, and taken the pieces of that from so many of the members that I've been fortunate to come across. And there are so many really good elected members in New York State.
Kim, we want to ask you, as part of our fundamental questions, what's a fundamental principle that guides you?
For any of the work that we do within the CDO office or Chief Disability Office, accessibility, inclusiveness, and integration. Those 3 principles are what guide everything that we do in this office, because our goal is for people within the disability community to be leading lives in New York, an accessible New York, right? Regardless of what that means to that individual person, and that they are included in every aspect of society that they would like to be, and that they are integrated members, not kind of sitting along the sidelines somewhere. Those 3 principles, they fall into almost every piece of writing we do. They drive us to every policy we tackle from the professional level, being respectful and thoughtful of others.
Thank you. This has been a fabulous conversation. It's been a pleasure to learn a little bit more about you and what drives you, all the great work that you're doing here from the executive chamber. Sita, do you want to have any closing comments?
Kim, I just can't thank you enough again for being here with us, for giving us this opportunity. We're going to hear from Tiffany Parker as well from NYSIF to talk about Executive Order 31 and a lot of what Kim has discussed here with us today. So I don't think we could have picked a better first Chief Disability Officer for the state of New York. And this isn't just about what we do here in government. This is about what we think about workplaces, industry, and the private sector all over New York State and beyond. And I always like to say New York first. When you're a New Yorker, whether you're a New Yorker from the city, New Yorker from upstate, we have a way where we're New York first. New York's the best. New York leads in the nation. And Kim, you just sealed that deal. So thank you very much for coming on today and talking with us.
Thank you. And I really have to thank you guys. And I do have to thank Tiffany. We've had a ton of great agencies be very responsive to EO31. How can we do this? What can we do? What tools can you give us? Sharing with us things that have worked already. I suspect in another year or 2, we will be wanting to talk with you guys about what has worked so that we can share that with other agencies. So thank you. And thank you for doing this, highlighting EO31. It is really important work. And ultimately, we do a lot of work with federal organizations that work on employment for people with disabilities. And I'm constantly telling them that we are going to win. And again, I don't know what we're going to win because it's not like there's a prize, but New York is going to be a model for the rest of the country in employing people with disabilities. Thank you for hosting me for this. And thank you for being a partner.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Fundamental, the podcast from NYSIF.